Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is the second video of my Fantasy Caro Kann Masterclass, and in this video we will be taking a closer look at the move pawn to e6 from the black side. Okay, so against e6 we play the move knight to c3, and here black has two options, either bishop to b4 or knight to f6. Let's first look at knight to f6. So as mentioned in the introduction video, we play e5, we play f4, and after c5, knight f3, 95% of the time your opponent will play knight to c6. Okay? Every once in a while, you will get an opponent who will actually play the move queen to b6. And the whole point, if you look at the arrows, is that it's difficult for us to actually get our bishop out without losing the b2 pawn. That's kind of the whole point of queen to b6. So what we do against queen b6 is we actually take the pawn on c5. If bishop takes c5, now we actually get a very similar position as we would in the queen b6 variation of the Caro Kann. If you remember from the introduction video, black, after the move pawn to f3, black quickly played the move queen b6, played a quick e5 to get the bishop out to c5. And just like in that variation, we play the exact same move, which is the move knight to a4. Here black has two options. Let's begin with bishop f2 check. Here we play the move king e2. Very important, do not play king d2. This loses, right? It's very, very important that you cover the e3 square with your bishop. So after bishop to f2, we move our king up, and black is going to play either queen a6 or queen c6. The reason for that is there's no way for the queen to hold the bishop. Right, all of these squares in the diagonal are covered by our pieces. So what black needs to do is actually move the queen to one of these two squares and attack the knight. So we're attacking the bishop and black attacks our knight. So for queen a6, for example, we take on f2, queen takes a4, and here simply bishop to e3 is more than enough. This is about where I would stop with the analysis. The engine gives about +1. We are much better in this position. We have a very nice center. We have the bishop pair. The queen on a4 is extremely misplaced, and we are about to play something like bishop d3, rook e1, king g1. We're about to castle by hand here, and we just have a very, very comfortable middle game. If after knight a4, black decides to go for queen a5, here it's very, very important that we play the move pawn to c3. Okay? After c3, black's probably going to go bishop to e7, right? We're threatening the move pawn to b4. Black has to do something about that, so bishop to e7. And here we play the very, very interesting move pawn to b4. And while it is true that we are weakening the c3 pawn, right? The pawn is now a backwards pawn. What happens is the queen has to move, and we just simply have a lot of space here. So we are already about to play something like bishop to e3, and after like knight c6, bishop d3, castle, castle, and the engine in this position gives approximately +1 for very, very good reason. I mean, this c3 b4 is actually very, very beneficial for us. We have very nice control of the c5 square. Okay, we have a lot of space on the queen side. Our bishops are very nicely placed. Look at black's bishop on c8. This bishop is not getting out anytime soon. We just have a very, very nice position. And finally, after d takes c5, black can also play the move queen takes c5. Okay, technically black can also play knight takes c5, but this isn't advisable because the bishop then becomes blocked. Okay, so let's have a quick look at queen takes c5. In general, the queen on c5 is a very misplaced piece. Okay, it's very vulnerable to certain bishop e3 attacks, and it's just not very well placed. Here we play bishop to d3, and after something like knight c6, we play the important move pawn to a3, right, preventing the knight coming to b4. And after something like bishop e7, queen e2, short castle, we can play the move bishop to e3, queen a5, and short castle. This is approximately where I would stop the analysis here. White is much better. The engine gives approximately +1.6. Yeah, our pieces are simply much better placed. We have a much better grasp of the center. And yeah, we just have a very, very comfortable middle game. So with the queen b6 sideline now over, let's go to the main move, knight to c6. Okay, here we play the move bishop to e3, and in this position, black has 4 moves. The first move which black has is the move a6. This intends a very quick b5. The next move which black has is the move queen b6, right? Taking advantage of the fact that we moved our bishop, right? This b2 pawn is now very, very weak. Another move which black has is the move bishop to e7. And the final move which black has is to take on d4. Let's start with pawn to a6. So like I mentioned, black is wanting to play a quick b5. Here, we play the move queen to d2. There black goes with pawn to b5. And after something like dc5, bishop c5, knight c5, we liquidate the board here and we play a very, very nice move, queen to f2. This is a motive you really should keep in mind. This whole idea of rotating your queen to f2, or sometimes if you decide to castle short, you will have the move queen e1 followed by queen g3. This is a very, very good motive and something you really should remember. So queen f2, we're attacking the knight on c5. Black is advised to defend with something like queen b6. And here I would play the move bishop to d3. Okay. If pawn to b4, we simply rotate our knight back to e2. And after something like a5, we can castle short. This is approximately the position we have. The computer gives equal. I'm going to be honest with you guys. But in my opinion, white is the one playing for something here. Right, we have a very, very nice pawn on e5. We can always plant a knight on d4. Right, this d4 square is completely and utterly under our control. Right, we always have maybe some queen g3, queen h4 ideas. We can also slowly play for some f5, right? Opening the f file, breaking open the position. In my personal opinion, white is a choice. So that's pretty much a6. Not really too much which you have to remember, not too much you have to know. If instead of a6, black decides to go for c takes d4, well here we play the move knight d4, and black plays bishop c5. This is the whole point of c takes d4. It's to open up the bishop and put it on a very nice square. So after bishop c5, we play the move queen d2. Black decides to castle, okay, we castle long. a6, and once again we get the very important move queen to f2. Really, really remember this motive. In this position, black is virtually forced to liquidate the board. Okay, we're already threatening certain knight c6, bishop c5 ideas. Black is basically forced to take. So something knight d4, bishop d4, bishop d4, queen d4. So we get this liquidation right here. Black's going to play something like pawn to b5, right? Going on the attack. And here, after something like bishop to d3, the best move for black, believe it or not, is to actually play this move queen to b6. And the reason for this is that our attack on the king side is much, much cleaner than black's attack. Yes, white has pawns already rolling. Yes, black is threatening pawn to b4 at some point, right, if the queen moves, for example. But in general, apart from the 2 pawns and the rook on a8, black doesn't really have anything developed. The bishop on c8 is terrible, the knight on d7 is very, very bad, the queen on d8 is also not doing anything, right? We have a phenomenal bishop. We can play f5 at our leisure. We can lift our rook, for example. We actually have stuff going for us. We have pieces which we can activate. Black only has pawns. Okay, so for this reason, the best move is queen to b6, queen b6, knight b6, and a very important maneuver to remember in this position, knight e2, b4, knight d4. Okay, we Frankfurt Airport to a very nice square in the center. We blockade the pawn on d5, and we have a very, very comfortable game here. The engine gives approximately plus 0.6. Another move which black can play is the move bishop to e7, okay? Now, the idea behind bishop to e7 is obvious, right? Black wants to castle kingside. But what you need to understand is that black moved the bishop once. At some point, we'll take on c5 and the bishop will be forced to move again, okay? So we will essentially win a tempo against black. So how can this look like here? After bishop to e7, we play queen d2, short castle. Now we play d takes c5, okay? Black will take back with the bishop most likely. Black can take back with the knight, but then the bishop on e7 becomes very, very passive, right? Can't really find a square to develop. So bishop c5. Here we castle long. And now we are actually following a game between 2 grandmasters. So let's see how this game develops. Black goes queen a5. We go pawn to a3. Rook to b8, intending to move pawn to b5. We take on c5, queen c5, bishop to d3. And black makes the losing move pawn to b5. Okay, and the reason why this loses is very, very beautiful. It loses to bishop takes h7 check, king h7, knight g5, and after king g8 we have the very nice move queen to d3. Okay, we're threatening queen h7 checkmate, And after pawn to f5, the very beautiful rotate queen h3. So nice. We play queen d3, we induce a weakness, and we just slide to h3. Okay? And the game is essentially over. It's already +5. Black played here rook e8, queen h5, queen e3 check, king b1, bishop to b7, queen f7, king h8, and the nail in the coffin, rook to d3. Okay, rook h3 is now basically unstoppable. Black has to sacrifice the queen, and after cd3, knight c5, queen h5, king g8, queen h7, king f8, queen h8, king e7, finally queen takes g7 check, and in this position black resigned. The position is completely and utterly lost. The takeaway here is that you will take on c5 at some point, which makes black lose a tempo. Very often you'll get an opposite side castle, and you really use this bishop d3 to get an attack going. Okay, you also have other attacking ideas like queen f2, queen g3, right? As you guys already know, we can also maybe lift a rook, and in general our attack is always going to be much cleaner than black's. So that's basically everything you need to know about this knight f6 variation. Yeah, like I mentioned, you're gonna get this position right here very often. We play bishop e3, and then it's just really about understanding the 4 moves, right? Black either has pawn to a6, queen b6, bishop b7, or c takes d4. I will quickly mention that black can actually start with the move knight to f6. I know this is called the e6 variation, but black can start with knight to f6, and very often we will actually transpose into the e6 variation. So once again, we play e5, and after knight fd7, f4, e6, we play knight to f3, pawn to c5. And in this position, if we played knight to c3, okay, black would play knight to c6, and we actually transpose into the other position. The reason that I gave this move an inaccuracy is because we actually have a better move we can play. We can actually play the move pawn to c3 here, which leads to a better French structure. The reason we have to play the move knight c3 in this instance, the reason we can't play pawn to c3, is that black is actually threatening d takes e4, f takes e4, and queen h4 check. Right? If we were to play the move pawn to c3, black can take, f takes, queen h4, and this pawn is lost. Okay? But with our knight on c3, after we get this whole trade, this e4 pawn becomes protected by the knight on c3. Okay? And now if we go back to the knight f6 variation, the reason here we can play the move pawn to c3 is because black doesn't have queen h4, right? We were actually able to get on knight to f3 very early on. Okay, so with the knight f6 variation completed, let's move to the more common option, bishop to b4. So against bishop b4, we play bishop d2, and in this position, black has one of 4 moves to choose from. Okay, let's begin with the first move, bishop takes c3. This is always a very fun move. So first of all, before I actually get into the moves, by taking on c3, black has made a huge concession. We take back, and we now have the beautiful bishop pair. This is going to give us a very nice advantage. In this position, black would take on e4, and a very important move here to understand. Remember, we're playing the fantasy variation. We're not scared about sacrificing material. We're not scared about giving up a pawn or 2 for activity. The best move in this position is not to take back on e4, right? This runs right into queen h4 check. The best move is actually to play the move knight to h3. The idea behind knight h3 is the following. Well, first of all, we can't develop our knight to our natural square. Okay, so we have to develop it somewhere. But very often you will have some kind of a kingside attack, right? You will have some queen d2, queen f2, queen g3. If you castle short, you will have some queen e1, queen g3, and very often this knight on h3 will either come to f4 or g5, harassing the king here. If black gets greedy and takes on f3, let's not forget we're down 2 pawns here. We recapture a pawn, so now we're only down 1 pawn. We play queen takes f3, and in this position, if black plays the move knight to f6, we play bishop d3, short castle, long castle, and black needs to tread very carefully here. We're already threatening some kind of d5, bishop b4 in some cases, knight g5, h4, h5. Let's have a look how this can look. If in this position black plays the move pawn to b5, right, beginning their pawn storm, we actually have basically a winning sequence. It's a long sequence. It starts with the move bishop to b4. Let's not forget, very early on, black actually gave up their bishop. They took on c3. They gave up their dark squared bishop. So now we have this uncontested diagonal. Okay, so bishop to b4, rook e8, we play the move knight to g5. Okay, already you can see certain threats looming. If in this position black plays the move pawn to h6, we have a very, very nice move, pawn to h4. This is a classic fishing pole or fishing hook. If black ever decides to take on g5, hg5, the knight has to move somewhere, and after something like knight d7, we play the beautiful move rook h8 check. We have a lot of checkmates here. This is probably the most beautiful. And after king h8, we bring our queen to h7. Really pay attention to this bishop, the important role that it's playing. I mean, it's slicing through this entire diagonal. Very, very nice. So black can never really take this on g5. For this reason, black might play a move like pawn to a5, right, beginning their pawn storm. But this move completely and utterly loses to another phenomenal sacrifice, bishop h7 check. Okay, if the king moves to h8, right, the king can't move to f8, right, look at this bishop. If the king moves to h8, it's very, very obvious, right, knight f7 is a fork. But what happens after knight takes h7? Here we play queen takes f7, and after king h8, the very nice calm move, queen to g6. We're threatening knight f7 check, we're threatening queen h7 check, and if black decides to take on g5, well then h takes g5, and it's literally forced mate. The h file is going to open up here, it's simply completely lost for black. Black can also try and move like knight f6, but like I mentioned before, the easiest win is simply knight f7, and you're going to pick up the queen and win the game. Very, very dangerous. The best move in the position for black is the move queen to c7, right? You're defending the f7 pawn, so you're already fighting against various bishop h7, queen f7 ideas. You're also getting out of some fork ideas, right, by moving your queen to c7. It's a very, very good move from black. In general, if black decides to go for this, we have a very simple game plan. We're looking to play g4, knight e4 to remove this defender, and then we crash through with g5. Every once in a while, after g4, instead of moving our knight back to e4, we can actually take on f7. I'm going to show you guys some examples of when we can do this and when we can't do this. So how does this look? We play the move pawn to g4. Once again, black cannot take on g5. Remember, this is poisonous. This fishing pole cannot be taken by black here. The h-file opening is dead loss for black. So after g4, if black decides to play something like a5, expanding on the queen side, looking for an attack, and after bishop c5, if black plays a careless move like a4, we have a winning sequence here. We can play the move knight e4 followed by g5. This works, but like I mentioned before, we actually have the move knight takes f7. Okay, if king takes f7, we play pawn to g5. This is very easy. But what happens if queen takes f7? This is where it gets very, very fun. Once again, we play the move pawn to g5. If the queen moves to h5, the simplest win here is queen h5, knight h5, bishop to g6, right? Picking up the piece. But what happens if in this position black plays a move like knight to d5? Now it is a blunder. I marked it as a blunder, but why is it a blunder? You have an absolutely outstanding attraction sacrifice. Really look at this bishop on c5, holding this diagonal. You have the beautiful move bishop h7 check. Okay, the king has to move somewhere, and then you can take the queen for free. Let me quickly show you guys one more example. So after queen c7, g4, if black decides to play the move bishop to b7, right, before we had the move pawn to a5, if black goes bishop to b7, we actually play the move knight e4 here. The reason why knight takes f7 doesn't work, right, let's follow down the same line and see what's different here. After knight takes f7, queen takes f7, pawn to g5, we're following the exact same line. Black has the very nice move pawn to c5, okay? The queen is defending the bishop, and the bishop is just skewering our rook and our queen. So really, really pay attention to if knight takes f7 works. Look for it. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, knight e4, we play pawn g5, we have a very, very nice attack. So that's basically everything you have to know about h6. We play h4, we play for the fishing hook, black can never take, the h-file opening is always good for us, and in general, we're playing for g4, knight e4, g5. Okay? Always look out for tactics regarding knight takes f7 followed by g5. Okay, but for that to work, you need to have a lot of pieces of the puzzle. You need to have this bishop on this diagonal. Your queen can't be under attack, can't be in the same line of sight as your rook, right? So already something like bishop b7, c5, you need to be careful of. You need to have a lot of things going for you, but really look for it, because if you have it, you're going to win the game immediately. Real quick, if black decides to play the move queen d5, this looks like a good move, right? You're looking for a queen trade, you're threatening the undefended knight on g5. This is actually a losing move, and it loses to the beautiful sacrifice bishop takes h7. So unbelievably beautiful. If knight takes h7, it's obvious, right? Queen f7, we take on e8, we take the knight, this is checkmate. And if, wait a second, and if king h8, we play the very nice move queen to g3. Very important, do not fall asleep and play queen h3. Your knight is undefended and it will be taken with check. Okay, so you have to defend it with queen g3. We do not want to play a move like h4 because this then cuts off the connection of the h-file. So queen g3, and if black decides now to take on h7, we win with knight f7, king g8, and very, very nice queen to g6. We're threatening to play knight h6 followed by queen e8. That's our threat. So black has to do something. Black will very likely defend with the bishop. And here we simply play knight to e5. Now we're threatening queen f7. And just look at this diagonal. Look at this bishop. Black cannot play rook e7 or rook f8 defending against f7. If black decides to go for something like knight to a6, well, this loses. This is checkmate in 2. Queen f7, knight g6. And like I mentioned before, black cannot play a move like rook f8. This is actually the best move. And here we simply take on f8, and in this position we play something like queen f7 and something like rook hf1. This is more than enough here. We're threatening to lift our rook to f4, sorry. The position is simply completely and utterly lost for black. So we've looked at h6, we've looked at queen d5, both moves lose. Fun fact, by the way, h6 is actually the best move entering this whole fishing hook. But what if black plays something like knight to a6? Well, once again, we have a very nice move, bishop takes h7 check. Okay, if king h8, we can play the move knight takes f7. This is totally okay, we win the queen, but even stronger is the move queen h3. And I mean, we're already threatening so many nasty stuff. This is completely and utterly winning here. If after bishop h7, we get knight takes h7, in this position we play queen f7, king h8, and in this position we play the very nice move pawn to h4. This knight is completely untouchable because the h-file opens, and after something like queen d7, the very nice move queen to g6. We're threatening checkmate. Black cannot really take. The position is completely lost here. Black can try something like knight f6, but here we have something like rook d f1, and if knight b4, for example, we have knight f7, king g8, and the absolutely phenomenal move rook takes f6. And the position is completely lost. So that's everything about the knight to f6 variation. I know it was a lot. What else can black do? Black can also go for the move queen to f6. This is a very interesting try. And now we see the power of putting our knight on h3. We actually play the move knight to f4 in this position. Okay. Here, very likely, black will play knight e7, preparing to castle short. And in this position, we castle long, black castle short, we play bishop to d3. There's no need to analyze any further, in my opinion. We have the bishop pair, we have a very nice knight on f4, we're about to play g4, g5, our attack is so much cleaner than black's. Just for some reference, the computer gives this plus 1.5 for white, so a very comfortable position here. Also, black has a lot of trouble developing the queen side. It's very difficult for this knight to come out, right? The c6 square is blocked. It's difficult for the bishop to come out because the e6 pawn is also blocking the bishop. And yeah, you just have a very comfortable game. This is why it's better for black in this position to actually play the move queen h4 check. Okay, this baits the move g3, And now after queen f6, we play knight f4. We're going to follow the exact same line. Knight e7, bishop d3, but in this position, black has the move knight to d5. Black didn't have this move before, because before, the pawn was on g2, remember? So that means we could take the knight on d5, and after queen f3, we could play knight c7 intermezzo, making the king move, and then finally recapture on f3, and then black king can castle, essentially. But now that black has induced the move pawn to g3, we cannot take the knight on d5 because we would lose our queen. We don't have the g pawn on g2. So for this reason, the best move is simply to castle, and after knight c3, bc3, we get this position right here. White has a smidge. White's approximately plus 0.7, plus 0.8 here. You have the f-file. You have a very nice bishop on d3. You have a pretty comfortable game. So that was everything regarding e takes f3, queen f3. If black doesn't get greedy and plays the knight f6, this is actually the correct move. Here I would recommend to play f takes e4, and if black gets greedy and plays the knight takes e4, we have the very nice move queen to g4. Okay, we're attacking the knight, we're attacking the pawn on g7, and in this position black has two options. Black can either retreat back to f6 and then play rook g8, which leads to a very forced sequence, or black can play knight takes c3. Let's begin with knight f6. So here we take on g7, the rook comes to g8, we play queen to h6, rook g6, queen h4, rook g4, queen f2. Okay? How can this game continue? Something like knight e4, right? Attacking the bishop, attacking the queen. We simply play the move queen to f3, we slide our queen up one square. Black might play something like e5. Here we can castle long, knight c3, queen c3. We get a position like this here. The computer gives plus 1.6. Why? Well, first of all, black is not even close to castling queenside. Okay, black has nothing developed. In general, we're threatening here bishop c4, followed by rook hf1. We're threatening to put pressure on the f7 pawn. And black wasted so much time driving our queen away that black doesn't actually have anything developed. If instead, black decides to take on c3, here we play queen g7, queen h4, knight f2, rook f8, bc3. This sequence is all forced. And now I'm going to show you guys a game between two very strong players, between an international master and a grandmaster, and it went as follows. Knight d7, bishop d3, attacking the h7 pawn. Black plays h6, castle, queen f6, queen g3, queen g5, queen c7. We get a bit of shuffling. Knight to f6, rook ae1, knight d5, queen d6, queen e7, queen g3, queen g5, queen d6, queen e7, queen g3, queen g5, queen f3. White decides to break the cycle. Queen to f4, queen h5, queen g5, queen f3, bishop to d7. It's very, very funny in this position. Finally, when black has managed to get the bishop out to d7, finally when black is able to castle queenside, it's simply too late. Knight e4, queen e7, c4, we play the move c5, and the second black castles, knight d6. This is an absolute bone here. Look how powerful this knight is on d6 here. And it's absolutely disgusting. And after king b8, rook b1, okay, black makes a mistake here, takes on d3. The position is lost regardless. Rook b7, king a8, queen d3, rook b8. And in this position, white finds that absolutely beautiful. Rook takes a7. And after king a7, queen a3, it's simply checkmate here. Okay, so we looked at what to do against knight takes e4, right? We play queen g4. What happens if black plays the move pawn to e5 here? Well, against e5, we play the move knight to f2. And this is partially the reason why we played knight h3. It's to rotate it to f2, so we have a very nice grasp of the e4 square, the e4 pawn. How can this continue? After something like e takes d4, bishop takes d4, and say bishop to e6. Here I would simply recommend you play queen d2, you castle long. Okay, black will play something like queen to c7, and now a very nice move, bishop to e2. We are foreshadowing g4. We're not playing g4 yet, because if we play g4, black will simply castle long, and then we have a huge weakness. We play bishop e2, we're foreshadowing this move, and if now black decides to castle, we play g4, and it all worked out. Okay? If black doesn't decide to castle short, if black decides to go long, well, this is precisely why we didn't play g4. This would be a huge weakening move. Here we play something like queen to c3, and we slowly build up, right? Rook he1, maybe bishop f3. We could also go h3 g4, right? We slowly build up the position. So that's basically everything regarding bishop takes c3. I know it was a lot, okay? Just remember, in general, you have the bishop pair, so this is always going to give you some confidence, some advantage. And if d takes e4, this is basically the only move here which is played. You play the move knight h3. Really remember this move here. You're looking sometimes to go back to f2. You're looking sometimes to go via f4 or g5 to attack black's king. And very often you will have h4, g5, various fishing pole ideas, various knight f7 ideas, and you will just have some very, very nice play, considering you will castle queenside. So that was a lot, but that is the most important variation, to be completely honest. So we've looked at bishop takes c3. What other options does black have to their disposal? Well, something that black can do is that they can actually play d takes e4, and after f takes e4, they can actually play bishop c3, and queen h4 check, right? So what black is essentially doing is removing this defender of the e4 pawn, so that when queen h4 comes, you can take the pawn on e4. If instead black goes queen h4 immediately, well, this is a very bad move because we've simply played g3, we force the queen back somewhere, and already after something like knight to f3, we have a very, very nice position. Okay, so for this reason, bishop takes c3, bishop c3, queen h4 is one way for black to play. Here, the best move is to play pawn to g3, and now we get a bit of a force sequence. Okay, yes, black is going to go queen takes e4. Yes, black is going to play queen takes h1. But what we are going to do is we are actually going to trap the queen. Okay, so how can this look like? Queen takes e4, queen e2, queen h1, knight to f3. Already you can see the box forming. Okay, already we're threatening to castle and play something like bishop to g2. b6, we castle long, knight f6, bishop h3. This is one way to do it. Okay, black can play something like bishop to a6. Here we simply just move our queen, and the best thing that black has here is to take the rook on d1, king takes d1, and this is the position we get. Objectively speaking, the position is equal. The engine gives equal. It's a bit of a tough position because on one hand, we have much better development. We have the two bishops. Black's king is still in the center, but black does have the two rooks and black is a pawn up. Okay, so what we are going to have to do is we're going to have to look for dynamic play. Okay, knight to e5, g4, g5. Maybe we find a way to get our queen to g5 to attack g7. Okay, so real quick, we looked at bishop takes c3, queen h4, and we looked at queen h4 immediately. I would also quickly like to mention that if black plays the move knight to f6, which is definitely played at the lower levels here, you can play the move e5, knight d5, knight f3, knight d7, bishop d3, and if black decides to castle short here, we get the beautiful Greek gift sacrifice, bishop h7, knight g5, queen h5 is coming. It's +3, +4, you're going to win that game. So that's basically everything you need to know about d takes e4. There's not really too much more to say. What else can black play here? Well, the only two other options which black really has to their disposal are moving this knight out. So either knight f6 or knight e7, preparing to castle short. So let's begin with knight to f6. Okay, the first move is obvious. Play pawn to e5. This is a move we always play. We now force the knight back to d7. We play the move f4, right? We always want to get our knight to f3 if possible. If black castles here, for example, we have a very, very nice move, queen to h5. And already you can see that we are looking at some bishop d3, knight f3, knight g5. Already we're poking a little bit at black's king side here. And what's so nice about the move queen h5 is that it virtually forces at some point the move g6, which is a very, very weakening move here. Already we can just back up, play something like queen to h3. Black might go for something like b5. We simply play something like knight to f3. And after something like bishop e7, we castle long here, and we really play against this weakness. So something that we could do, for example, is to slide our queen and go h4, h5, use this pawn as a bit of a hook. okay? If black plays something like b4, we move our knight back, and like I mentioned here, we can move our queen, h4, h5, maybe we go knight g3, maybe we go g4, we play for f5. In general, we have a very, very nice position here. The computer gives about plus 1.5. And let me just say, that's if black castles, okay? Black doesn't necessarily have to castle in this position. Black can also play the move c5, kind of striking on the queen side. The first thing that you need to understand is that whenever black plays c5, it liberates the b5 square. So already I'm kind of getting at something. You're looking at the move knight to b5 here, trying to Frankfurt Airport into d6. Okay, so c5, oh sorry, my fault. So c5, we go knight b5. This basically now forces bishop d2, queen d2, and black essentially has to castle here. If black doesn't castle, we're getting knight d6 in, which is a bit of a bone. So black castles here, knight to f3, knight to c6. Here we can simply solidify with a move like c3. This is more than good enough. And after a6, knight d6. Here you can see the power of this knight. It's very difficult for black to actually eliminate this knight for the time being here. And here we are now following a game between two grandmasters. Let's just see how it goes. C takes d4, C takes d4, knight b6, bishop d3, knight e7, short castle, rook b8, rook ac1, bishop to d7, rook c3, and black makes a mistake here and plays the move knight bc8, and white finds the crushing move, bishop takes h7, check. And after king takes h7, knight g5, it's a classic Greek gift sacrifice, king g8, queen to d3, black plays g6 here, queen h3, this is now basically a forced checkmate here, and black resigns. Okay, so that was knight f6. Black can also play the move knight to e7. And what's interesting about the move knight to e7 is that if we decide to play e5, black has an entry point to the f5 square, so really keep that in mind. So how can this look? Knight to e7. Here, I would recommend the move pawn to a3, asking the question. Remember, if black decides to take the bishop on the knight on c3, I apologize, we take back and we basically transpose to the other position where black took on c3 immediately. Okay, this is why it's so important to understand that bishop takes c3 variation, because very often you will end up playing a3 asking the question. Okay, so bishop c3, we already know what to do. And if bishop to a5 here I would simply just recommend to go bishop to d3, right? Always look out for these various Greek gift sacrifices. Knight d7, and a very, very nice move here, pawn to f4. Why pawn to f4? Okay, so first of all, if we go pawn to e5 here, black can play the move bishop to b6, and now we are virtually forced to play knight ge2. This isn't optimal. In an ideal world, we have our knight on f3, but we weren't able to because we didn't have time. Okay, so for this reason, it's super, super important in this position to play the move f4, because now if black goes bishop to b6, we are in time and can play the move knight to f3. Black castles short, we play e5. Yes, black gets this f5 square, but it really isn't that dangerous. We always have g4 to our disposal. We can rotate our knight around to g3. The knight on f5 isn't really dangerous. Knight to e2, pawn to c5. We solidify with pawn to c3, and this is where I would stop the analysis. The engine gives approximately plus 1.4 for white. We have a very typical French structure. We're looking for kingside play. Okay, so we're looking maybe to castle short, queen e1, queen h4 at some point, maybe g4, maybe knight g3, maybe we set up a battery. We really just go for kingside play. Okay, so that's basically everything. I know it was a lot, okay? I am aware that it was a lot, but you need to understand this is the most played move from the black side here. It's very important that you know what you're doing here. So quickly to recap here. After e6, we play knight to c3. Black has two options, either bishop to b4 or knight to f6, okay? Very important, black can also play knight to f6 here, but this will transpose to the other variation with e6, knight to f6. If black decides to go for knight to f6, we always play e5, kick the knight back, and we get a very nice French position here. We're looking for f4, so we can get our knight to f3. We're looking to maybe play bishop b3, queen d2. Depending on the position, we will castle long. We can also castle short. This bishop usually comes to d3, okay? And very often we play for the f5 break. This is what we're playing for, okay? So maybe we rotate our knight around and slowly play for f5. That's if knight to f6. If instead black decides to go for bishop to b4, here we play bishop to d2, and we simply just need to know the four options here. Either black is going to go for a6, b5 at some point. Black can also take on c3, which gives us the bishop pair, which leads to very, very interesting dynamic positions. Remember everything with bishop to b4 and this whole knight g5 followed by h4 hook. You get lots of these very interesting positions. If black decides to go for knight to e7, here it's very important to play a3, ask the question of the bishop here, and once again we play for f4, f5, we play for this kingside pressure. If black goes knight to f6, here we play e5, and once again we go for this kingside pressure. And finally, if black plays d takes e4, here we get a bit of a forced line. We play the move f takes e4, we allow this bishop c3, queen h4. Black will end up taking the rook on h1, we will end up trapping that rook on h1, and then we lead to a bit of a dynamic position. Real quick, before the video ends, I will mention it one more time. The PGN file is in the description below. I really do recommend you guys check that out. Download it. I annotated everything. It should be ready to go. If there are any questions regarding anything, do not hesitate to ask me. I'm always ready to answer you guys' questions in the comments. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys in the third video.